So to start things off, I want to create a new document that is 1024 pixels. So let's start there. Go to File, New, and we'll just actually create one by hand here just to have it custom. I don't think there is a preset for this icon size, but I could be wrong. It's more or less for the actual device. So we'll start there, and it's set at 72 dpi to start with. So I'll hit OK. And we have a new document that is just a blank artboard. So I'll save that down into our end file here. Or maybe I have our end file already in here, so I'll create a new one that's just, I'll just call it like working. Great. Okay, so that's saved. Be referencing our old file to start with, just to give a general foundation going. We have a dark background, as you can tell, and it's got this highlight at the very top. That's kind of a foundational approach just to making this a little more glamorous to look at. So let's first get that background going. I'm gonna change this to colors for now and grab this rectangle tool and go ahead and create one for the size of the artboard here. I'll just rename this to BG. And this can be flat black, like 100% black, but I like to not go 100% black on everything. It's kind of a little too dark. So maybe just up from that, 0E, 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 if you want the code there. So we'll start there, and I've actually included a pattern in our library, so I'll go ahead and place that for now. And it's in the start folder. It's called Pink Dust. So we'll include that. I'll just place it its full size by clicking once. And unfortunately at this time, Affinity Designer doesn't have an actual pattern fill kind of mode, so we actually need to just do this manually to start with. And I ended up doing this in this way. I created just a 9-column grid, slowly but surely making it the width of this full icon size. So I scaled it down in the end to be the width and height. So I'm going to group these three and just grab the right top corner, shrink it down, and then duplicate this a couple more times just so it nudges up against each edge and looks seamless. You might take a couple tries to getting that perfect, but all in all it'll look okay in the end. And referring back to our first one again, it's pretty dark, and I think what I did is decrease the opacity on this a tad just so it's a little more dark in the background, maybe about 80% or so. And then to make this a little more dramatic, we can create a new layer on top of that. Make this a pattern. That is a shape layer. Again, this rectangle going the full width and height. And I'll adjust that here. But this one I'm going to add a gradient that is a radial gradient, and it's going to appear basically like this. So we're going to create this gradient, and we're going to scale it up a bit just so it's just hitting the corners. We don't want it to be too perfect. So I think actually I used, instead of a radial here, I used a linear gradient. So I'm going to go back and revert that and change the direction real quick. Put the darkest on the very bottom and the lightest on the very top. And the very top handle has a black fill, but it's 0% opacity. So if you go through and select that and then change the opacity all the way down, it should have the effect we're after. I think the black is a little too black, so I might actually use a kind of a bluish black just to give it a kind of a softer effect. So I think that's what we're after there. And we might even decrease the opacity on this a tad just so that pattern comes through a bit. Let's see how this pattern might look with a blend mode on. Maybe something like that, just the luminosity so the pink isn't in there, but I kind of like the pink. I think we'll roll with that. So let's start there. That's creating our background. The very next part, we'll start creating the shape of our camera lens and continue on.